of all time are presented in this video. A war zone with thousands of shootings and hundreds of homicides each year, earning it the nickname Chiraq, and many refer to it as the murder capital of America. Chicago's public housing projects were once the breeding grounds for the city's most notorious gangs. Originally built for the poor, they quickly became open drug markets, where residents were virtual prisoners to dealers and violence. By the 1970s, the complexes were drug turf battlegrounds. Rival gangs did anything to control these high-rises. During the crack epidemic, the gangster disciples, vice lords, and P-Stones dominated the city's projects, earning millions in profit selling drugs. Without further ado, here are Chicago's 23 worst public housing projects of all time. Number 1. Cabrini Green Homes. The first part of the Cabrini Green housing project, the Francis Cabrini Homes, was constructed in 1942 and consisted of 55 two-story and three-story buildings on the near north side of Chicago. In 1962, the William Green Homes were constructed and contained 1,096 units in 8 white buildings that were each 15 or 16 stories tall. In the 1950s, the Egyptian Cobras gang, later called the Mickey Cobras, formed and started to move into the project, where they absorbed members of the Imperial Chaplains and Clovers. In the 1960s, the Black Deuces gang, also referred to as the Deuces Wild, moved into Cabrini, where they battled the Egyptian Cobras for control of the project. The Vice Lords arrived in the 1960s, and by the 1970s, the Disciples and Egyptian Cobras began battling for control of Cabrini. The Black Deuces would eventually join the Black Disciples. In 1978, all Disciples were converted into Black Gangster Disciples, and Cabrini followed gangster concepts and became BGD. Once the gang was established, a powerful drug ring formed in the project, which helped the BGDs take over Cabrini. The Gangster Disciples made millions in profit selling drugs in Cabrini Green throughout the 1980s and 1990s. The Vice Lords and Mickey Cobras controlled a few buildings, but the GDs called the shots in a majority of the project. About 95% of the project was eventually GD. In 1989, a 19-year-old GD named Charles Big Chuck Dorsey led a group of GDs that decided to stop sharing their profits with the gang. They were earning easy money fast, and Chuck was convinced that they no longer needed to be disciples and wanted to establish a new crew. They called themselves the Renegade Crazy Crew and broke ties with the Disciple Nation. The move angered Disciple leaders, and Cabrini Green exploded with violence. The Renegade Crazy Crew went to war with the rest of the Disciples, with both sides using Tech-9 machine guns as their weapon of choice. The war terrorized residents for more than 2 years before the Disciples decided to extend a peace offering to Big Chuck, a leadership position in the gang, in exchange for bringing his Renegade Crazy Crew back into the fold. The power struggle fractured the gang, leaving members with bitter feelings about Big Chuck and his crew. The Renegade Crazy Crew's disloyalty would be only the first blow to the gang's stronghold on the projects a few years later. On October 13th, 1992, 7-year-old Dantrell Davis was holding his mother's hand, walking the 100-foot distance from his building to Jenner Elementary School. A sniper, located inside one of the gang-controlled buildings, shot Dantrell in the head, killing the 7-year-old. The suspect, Anthony Garrett, later told police that he shot Dantrell by mistake. Garrett explained that he was trying to shoot rival gang members, but the 7-year-old got in the way. The incident led to a gang truce that lasted for 3 years. Metal detectors were installed in the building, and residents were issued ID cards. Police were at the project on a regular basis, and gangs were no longer able to sell drugs freely. The murder gained national attention and played a significant role in the ultimate decision to demolish Cabrini Green. Demolition of the Cabrini Green project began in 2000, and the last high-rise was torn down in 2011.
Number 2. Abois Homes. The Abois Homes complex, also referred to as the Village, was a CHA development comprised of 4 separate housing projects located on the near west side of Chicago. Abois is an acronym for the names of the 4 projects, which included the Jane Addams Homes, Robert Brooks Homes, Loomis Courts, and the Grace Abbott Homes. Each project is discussed after an overview of the gangs that dominated Abois. In the 1940s, the Imperial Chaplains and 14th Street Clovers controlled the project. The Vice Lords took over Abois in the 1960s. after members migrated from the North Lawndale neighborhood. The Vice Lords forced the Chaplains and Clovers out the project. But in the late 1960s, the Black Gangster Disciples moved into Ottawa and started beefing with the Vice Lords. In the 1980s, the Black Gangster Disciples began referring to themselves as the Black Gangsters, or New Breeds, and they continued their war with the conservative Vice Lords and traveling Vice Lords. Jane Addams Homes. The Jane Addams Homes were completed in 1939, making it one of Chicago's first public housing projects. It contained 1,027 units throughout 32 buildings. The development was located in the University Village neighborhood on the near west side of Chicago. The Public Works Administration and Housing Authority implemented racial segregation at the complex, and in January of 1938, only white families were selected as tenants for the Jane Addams Homes. It was built for the poor Italian and Russian Jewish population from the near west side during the Great Depression. After pressure from local black politicians, the CHA began inviting black families to the building, but they only lived in 2 towers. By the 1950s, white families began to move out and blacks began to move in. Gangs took over from the 1960s to the 1980s. Crime and violence continued to increase throughout the 1990s, and by 2002 the Jane Addams Homes were demolished. Robert Brooks Homes. The Robert Brooks Homes were built in 1943 and contained 835 2-story row house units. The development was located in the University Village neighborhood on the near west side, across the street from the Jane Addams Homes. From 1997 to 2000, the complex was rebuilt in 2 phases. Robert Brooks set a precedent for large projects and a strategy for expanding existing developments. As was the case in other Chicago public housing projects, gang activity and violence plagued the complex, and demolition started in 1998. The last building was torn down in 2001. Loomis Courts. The Loomis Courts project was located in the University Village neighborhood on the near west side and was completed in 1951. The complex contained 126 units in 2 7-story buildings. Loomis Courts was adjacent to the Robert Brooks Homes and was one of 8 complexes, all of which were called courts, built to house people displaced by the CHA's urban renewal projects. In 1951, Loomis was cited as one of the 10 best new publicly financed housing projects in America by a committee of architects appointed by the National Association of Housing Officials. In 2005, CHA started a 2-phase rehabilitation process that preserved Loomis